All right. Hey, welcome back to Unschooled Theology, episode number 11. We are finally actually getting started here in the Bible.
We're
took,
opening it
took
up.
took us a while. Yes. Yep. And we are going to start with Genesis 1:1. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. And we're going to do that for the next 4 episodes. So, yeah.
I didn't need this. I could have memorized that.
Yep, yeah, you really didn't. We're gonna take our time with it, look at phrase by phrase here, element by element of this verse, as I think it warrants that. So today we're gonna start with "in the beginning,"
There we go.
which is quite a statement when you really think about it, because it signals the opening of time. Like this, just the beginning of all time starts right here.
Huh.
And that it's important, I think, because it doesn't imply the idea of like a time before time. It
Mm,
implies something outside of time, right?
mm.
So this is not the beginning of the next phase of something.
Yeah.
It's the beginning of all time. That's why it doesn't specify what it's the beginning of. It's just the beginning. And it implies then that whatever is sparking this beginning, it exists outside of all of time.
Yeah. Alternative words could be potentially something like rebirth
Right.
or in the re-beginning or something of that
Something
nature.
like that. Yeah.
If we were saying this is a reestablishment of something,
Yes.
beginning
Yes.
has a little bit more has a little bit more strength to it.
Yes.
It means something is coming from for all intents and purposes nothing, or at least something so profoundly different that it would be defined as nothing compared to what is coming.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Also, it has foreshadowing to it, because things, at least in human experience, everything that has a beginning also has an ending.
Mm.
And so we open up the Bible with the phrase "in the beginning," and that implies, and there will be an ending.
Mm.
Which, of course, we get there in the Bible. In Revelations, we learn what the ending will be. But it's just interesting that it's like, hey, here's the beginning, and there's going to be an end to this thing. This is we talked a few episodes ago about the box inside the box.
Mm-hmm.
This implies there is an end to this box. There's a beginning of this box, and there is an end to this box as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. It's comparable to beginning of fairy tales with the phrase "once upon a time," and then the ending of fairy tales with "they lived happily ever after."
Yes. Yes.
So it
That, yeah.
implies that there's a
Yeah.
structure in which we're operating.
Yes.
But external of those, there is potentially something. Once upon a time means once in the chain of events of time. And so we're establishing our story here, and then we're ending our story with "they lived happily after," which means there's potentially things outside of that.
Yeah.
And so we have the phrase "in the beginning," which establishes time as being that, as the once upon a time,
Right.
implying that there is potentially
something
outside of that,
that.
but it's not proper to define it as time.
Right.
Which then could potentially imply at the end there's an ending. But outside of that ending, there could be something, but it's not properly defined as time.
Yes. Yes. So let's talk about time here for a second, because I find it interesting, particularly for our modern sensibilities, that the Bible opens with, it doesn't say God created the heavens and the earth in the beginning. We start with "in the beginning." God created the heavens, the earth.
Right.
And the idea that we start out with time is interesting, because time is a curious concept that humans, I think, have really begun to grapple with in the last century or so. Obviously, Stephen Hawking being, the biggest name in this what is time field. But really trying to understand what this strange phenomena of time is is something we've become much more curious about, I think, as a species in recent times. And I think there's good reason for that, because it is the most limiting factor that humans face. So we've developed as a species here better and better control over matter, right? We can make more things, we can do more things, you know, we can fly now, you know, something we couldn't do before. We can produce all kinds of things that we couldn't before, technology and, you know, books and whatever, right? The homes around us. So we're clearly, as a species, we are developing more and more control over matter.
Yeah.
And I think as a result of that, our inability to control or influence time has become more apparent.
Interesting. So you're saying that we know that we can extend our ability to manipulate the physical world, yes, far beyond what as just simple creatures we typically could through the use of technology and things like that.
Yeah, but especially in the last century. I mean, look at the technological advancements of the last 100 to 150 years, you know, unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, and don't even confuse like exponential growth. Just because you're at the top of the exponential curve doesn't mean that any point along that exponential curve doesn't mean that over the course of those past, 1,000 years, it's shocking how rapidly you've increased your capability, so like the idea that human history, and I apologize, but we're going to talk evolutionarily here, but the idea that humans have been around for, potentially, tens of thousands of years, and they spent the majority of that as hunter-gatherers. And then all of a sudden, within the course of like 10,000 years, they went from that to like major metropolises in Europe and China, and then to developing guns, to developing written languages, to developing all sorts of radical things. That's part of the exponential growth.
Oh, absolutely.
And so we know that somehow we can rapidly increase our ability to manipulate the physical world. But what you're saying is that for some reason, the ability to manipulate time escapes our capability.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's become even more apparent as we're
good at the other things.
Yeah. The fact that we are exponentially improving our ability to control matter, the fact that that's happening. I mean, if you think about it, we talk about that curve, right? If you're further down on that curve, it doesn't look exponential necessarily, right? What I'm saying is, in the last 150 years, it's become very clear that this is an exponential phenomenon. Right?
Yeah. And in fact, we can see the entire exponential curve.
Exactly.
We can observe historically what has gone before us.
We can see it better. That phenomena and our awareness of that has made it all the more stark and clear to us that we have no control over time.
Interesting. Can I extend this idea a little bit? Because I think what's even more revealing of this is what is going on, at least in the past, let's say 30 years, revolving around psychological research and how we perceive time is being emphasized. So my mind immediately goes to flow state, and the idea that flow state is one of the hallmarks of it is not perceiving the passage of time. And so psychologically, we're trying to understand how we view time and how we experience it, because we know that the actual fact of it, we cannot manipulate. So we can't manipulate time. Therefore, we're trying to manipulate the way in which we experience the reality of it.
Yes. And that is still, to me, it's control over matter in a way. Right.
Exactly.
Because our perception of things is a result of matter. I mean, to the extent that we even theoretically might control time, it's the ideas of like cryogenesis or something, right? Where we might freeze people for a period of time,
Yeah,
and then they
yeah,
would come back. That's still control over matter, right?
yeah.
That's
Well,
not
even that is
control over time.
aspirational. Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
exactly. No, exactly. But I'm saying even our aspirations for how we might manipulate time is
yeah,
really just manipulation of matter.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, and
Um,
even any I don't have a deep knowledge of physics. I'm just going to confess that right
Go
now.
ahead.
But even a physicist's argument about the potential malleability of time, about how time potentially moves when you're at different speeds,
Right.
at different rates, is completely useless to in a functional sense. It might be a material truth,
Yeah.
but it's functionally useless.
As of right now, it is. Yeah.
As of right now, exactly.
And even in that situation, uh, time is still moving, right? It's the even the theoretical ideas, right, about going light speed and these kind of things.
Potentially slows it.
Yeah, it slows your interaction with it, but
Mm-hmm.
you're not stopping it, right? And
Yeah.
once again, it still comes down to control of matter.
Yeah.
Um, and I should say, this is maybe a side note, but it should become more clear to us too, as we realize how little control we have over time. We have none. We actually have less control over matter than we perceive ourselves to be. The laws of physics are
Mm-hmm.
born out of the existence of matter, and we have no control over the laws of physics, right? We can't revoke gravity. We can develop tools that operate against it and
Mm-hmm.
sort of nullify the effects of gravity, if you will, for a period of time, or make
Mm-hmm.
use of it to different ends for a period of time. We can fly, but we can't perpetually fly without pumping some sort of energy into that
Mm.
flying device, you know?
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So we're
So we've
negating gravity for ourselves, but only
we've
temporarily.
made tools that can overcome the realities that we interact with.
Yes, yes, but it still is all manipulation of matter. And so I think what's happened here is it's become clearer and clearer to us as humans that time is the one thing which it seems we may well never develop any sort of mastery over. I would
Mm.
argue we're not going to. What is that even like? Oh, well, could we pause time? What does that even mean?
Mm-hmm.
How do you pause time? What are you measuring it against?
Mm-hmm.
I know I paused a movie because an image froze and time passed before I started that image in motion again, right? So to pause something, you need the existence of time.
Mm-hmm.
So we clearly aren't going to have control over time. That I think is becoming more and more clear, and rather obvious. So that opening the whole Bible here with this phrase, I think makes a lot of sense when you think of it that way. I'm going to open the Bible here with time because it's the one thing you're never going to be able to control.
Mm.
And so the Bible confronts you with the phrase that I think actually establishes the groundwork for all of human psychology. I think the central psychological question that all humans must confront is, I'm not God, so now what? Right?
Mm.
That's sort of, I think, what we as humans have to deal with in life. It's the question we all must face is we're clearly not God. We clearly can't control all the stuff around us, right? We can't even, control time, obviously. That's what this is pointing out, but we have limits to what we can control. We're not God, so what do we do about that, right?
Yeah.
And to me, that is actually what the Bible is doing here. The opening
Yeah.
phrase of the Bible basically says, you cannot become God. You are not God. You cannot become God because God controls time. And
Mm-hmm.
so you can't be that. So now what? And that is, the Bible goes on to answer that question after that. That is
Yeah.
the rest of the Bible. The rest of the Bible is the so now what? but it opens up with this idea of you're not God.
Yeah, that's interesting. It all. I keep thinking about the rephrasing that you said. It could have said, God created the heavens and the earth in the beginning, but it says in the beginning God created heavens and the earth. That order is very interesting because it makes it, and I've not looked at this way before, but it makes it seem as the more powerful phrase is in the beginning God, not God created the heavens and the earth. Because as humanity, we're not able to create nothing or something from nothing, but we are able to, in a sense, create. We're able to manipulate in order to make things. That's actually a major function of us as humans, is that we, a major factor of who we are as humans is that we tend to create things.
Yeah.
So that actually isn't as powerful as in the beginning God.
Right.
That this existed at the very beginning of time, in the beginning of time. That is more profound and speaks more to the distinctiveness of the character than the phrase creating, which is interesting because we oftentimes associate the creative factor of being the most powerful, or like the most best example of God's power.
Right.
But the time manipulation is the one that's the most out of our reach.
Yes, because we can do an echo of the creation thing.
Exactly.
When we create, it's an echo of that. We can't perform an echo of this time control.
Yeah, this function of having a beginning.
Yeah, marking the beginning of time. That's not something we're going to ever be able to do. So that is the point at which it is clear that God is beyond us. So I think, to me, I look at this opening phrase of the Bible as being just an assertion of the human condition. The human condition is you're not God, right? Yeah. We would all like to be God. We'd love to be able to satisfy every, whim that we have, but you're not. So that is the opening of the Bible. You're not God. And what follows is the groundwork of how to handle that fact, how to handle that dynamic. How do you deal with the fact that you're not God?
Yeah.
But that is, to me, when I read in the beginning, I see the idea here, you're not God.
Yeah.
Because it will go on to then say who God is. But yeah, it's establishing that fact.
Yeah. I want to raise a contention because it occurs to me with what we're saying about the beginning and how it being so distinct about God. The contention could be that you're born, and so therefore you have a beginning as well. But I think it's far different. It would be as different as talking about entering a river midstream or being the origin of the river.
Right.
Those are very different things. The object that enters the river in the middle of it through the course of time, which is our birth, our entrance into the course of time or the river of time, whereas you have an origin of the river. The origin of the river is far more profound because it can see the entirety of the river as it goes through.
Right.
So I think that's important to distinguish, because just because we have a beginning, that's far different than the origins of time, the origins of the beginning. So
yes. Yeah. All right. So that's it for this phrase. We'll continue on with Genesis 1:1 in the next episode. So be sure to like, subscribe, follow, all that jazz, notification bell if you're on YouTube. Be sure to comment below, email us with any thoughts, unschooledtheology@protonmail.com. And we will see you then.